So today, that's what we're seeking to do, and we're seeking to start with reaching, connecting, and communicating. Victor, who's kindly shared us a cricket joke and said a few words, is going to introduce the session and talk a little bit about what is optimism and what can we do about it. So welcome, Victor.
Thank you very much, Guy, and hi to everyone, and especially you, James. You know, the more I Google you, the more optimistic I become. And so it's a special privilege to have James with his innovative cycling business, his fantastic business helping small business to understand its customers and how to connect with customers and branding. It's just great, James. So I'm really proud. And Guy, you are constantly at work. It was wonderful last year at the Albury-Wodonga Innovation Festival, where we had young and old, from robotics to schoolwork, just this wonderful theme of optimism that pervade everything. And I'm glad you've had the confidence to continue it this year. Look, I'm the only thing that stands between you and the brilliance of James, so I'm going to be reasonably brief. Since I last joined you last year, we've actually created the Centre for Optimism, and we now have 3,500 members across 65 countries. We have the head of psychology at Harvard, at Oxford, but most importantly, we've got ordinary people who just want to share their optimism and to become more infectiously optimistic leaders. It's really interesting. The research that has appeared since I was last with you is amazing. So Harvard University, Boston University, and the American military produced a study that said that the most significant trait in determining a healthy old age, that is living actively beyond the age of 85, is not geography, it's not genetics, it's optimism. And the Mount Sinai Medical System and the American College of Cardiology, a month later, reported 200,000 people studied over 50 years. The most protective factor against heart disease is optimism. The greatest predictor of recovery from heart disease is optimism. And we've been doing work with Dementia Australia, and even last Friday, I interviewed the country's expert on HIV, who said that optimism is in fact one of the key predictors of people living a long life with the HIV virus as well. And you'll like this study. Last 3 weeks ago, the Vienna Medical School reported that optimists have 1/7 the level of sleep disorder that anyone else has, that sleep helps your optimism, but most of all, a big part of becoming more optimistic is daydreaming. It's believing in a better future. It's the sort of stuff that James and Guy and others think about. You know, it's how to make yourself better. In business, it's crucial. You know, leadership, you know, these days, Rob Iger, who just left Disney, published his autobiography. He had 10 traits of the contemporary leader. He said it's infectious optimism. And joining Dominic Barton from McKinsey, the chair of Korn Ferry and others, it's not the big rah-rah person at the front. You know, you should all be optimistic, because it's the person who can unlock the optimism beneath that. And in particular, in this festival, it's about innovation. And the science says that you can't be innovative unless you're optimistic. Because what does optimism mean? Well, the oldest definition, we've got a few ladies online here, the oldest definition of optimism goes back to the oldest surviving book written by a woman in English, from Mother Julian of Norwich, who lived in the Black Plague. So she was in the middle of a pandemic, persecutions, slaughters of the wrong sorts of Christians. And her slogan was, all shall be well, all shall be well, everything shall be well. And I reckon that's lasted 700 years. Persist, keep going. And as Dyson, the vacuum cleaner guy, said, he had 5,000 iterations of the vacuum cleaner, 5,000 attempts to sell it to other people before he had his overnight success of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. So look, James, you epitomize this sort of philosophy. I just love what you do. So the first question we always have in these AWISE sessions is to ask you, James Hunter, what makes you optimistic?
Thanks, Victor. Simple. Well, I had a really simple answer for that one, which was I love riding a bike. Also, up in the background, you see some of my drums up there. So music makes me incredibly optimistic as well. But you've given me a new answer, and that is you've just introduced me and you've included the CEO of Disney and the head honchos at McKinsey. And to be included in that little trio makes me incredibly optimistic this morning. So thanks so much, Victor.
Fantastic. Well, look, you've brought a presentation and a story to share with us.
Yep.
And then, of course, we'll ask questions of you, and everyone can ask questions. And this is not a church, everyone. We've got the comment box on the side, so you can do comments. You see the little reaction button on the right, little hearts and applauses when James absolutely resonates with you. So, James, may I ask you to take the chair?
Great. Thanks, Victor. And thanks, Guy. And g'day, everybody. I'll jump straight into it. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about our business. And really, I think one of the other things that makes me incredibly optimistic is the online environment that all small businesses and enterprises are kind of either choosing to be involved with these days or are being forced to be part of. I think it's incredibly a positive time for small business within that environment. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. And I'll do that by just telling you a little bit about our business and how we've approached it and the stepped approach. So I'm going to put up a little presentation, and it normally goes for about an hour. So I'm going to chip through it very, very quickly, and I've cut out a whole lot of slides. So apologies if I skip through some stuff. Feel free to ask questions, but it's really about the approach that we took to how to grow our brand and our business within particularly an online environment. And it applies, I'd argue that it applies equally to businesses that are running bricks and mortar businesses. It applies to large businesses as well as small businesses. It's one approach. Sadly, there is no right answer, because then we'd all get that answer and away we'd go. And I also understand I'm talking to a group of people with different backgrounds and different agendas and different interests. So some of this might be incredibly relevant and parts of it might just be mildly interesting. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and you should be able to see our presentation. Guys, is that looking right? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so just very, very quickly, our business is Hunter Bros Cycling. We call it Hunter Brothers. Some people call it Hunter Bros. Doesn't really matter. It's me and my two sons, and you can see my two beautiful sons there now. You'll see some tattoos on them. Broadly, generally speaking, that was about 5 years ago. They're covered in tattoos now. So if you see any photos on our Instagram, social media, and that's something, if you're sitting there with your mobile phone, please check us out on Instagram now. That's the easiest. Or have a look at our online store. I don't mind if you're not looking at me. And you'll kind of get the vibe of what we do. We essentially, our brand lives on Instagram and online. So that's the easiest place to see it rather than me telling you about it. We've been around since 2014. What we do is we make premium cycling apparel. So our core consumer is what I described as a premium enthusiast, cyclist, and in a lot of cases, a really serious competitive rider. So they're racing, involved in big events. For those of you in Northeast Victoria, did I say someone was near Myrtleford and Bright this morning there? You'd know all about it. I actually live in Toowoomba, just outside of Mount Beauty, but I'm stuck in Melbourne at the moment with the lockdown. So I've been here for the last, I don't know, 14 weeks or something like that. I've lost count. But I'm normally up there cycling. We're an online business. We're direct to consumer. And I guess our vibe is fashion. If you have a look online, you'll see, and some of the slides I'll put up, you'll see our kits are not just ordinary plain kits. So what we do is we work with an Italian manufacturer. We design all the artwork, and then we have it laminated onto the kits or sublimated. It's essentially the photo gets put onto the kit. So you'll see it as we go through it. And we obviously, we love riding our bikes. So the approach we've taken to the huge online environment, and this is I haven't really gone into the background, but I think we can all understand that pretty much every retail brand, every enterprise is trying to, they're either doing it because they want to, or they're being forced to engage with the online environment. And I think all of us as consumers know that a huge amount of our research for anything we're buying or getting involved in or trying to understand is being done online now. I mean, these things are all being done online. And of course, what's happened with COVID has, of course, accelerated all of that. I think a couple of years ago when I first put this presentation together, I think online retail sales in Australia were somewhere around about 11 to 12% of the retail trade. That's skyrocketed past 15, well on its way to 20%. So that's $1 in $5 being spent in retail now is being spent online. And I guarantee you, I don't know, is it 80%, 90% of research and decision making is being at least started or involves some sort of online searches. So businesses have to come to grips with it in some ways. The approach we've taken is what I'm going to take you through now. It's essentially 5 simple points that you need to consider when you're looking at how you deal with your business online. So the first one is, and I apologize if I'm rushing, but I don't want to drag over all of these things too much. The first one is to identify your sales strategy. Seems like a fairly simple thing to do, but I'm amazed at how many small businesses I talk to that if I ask the simple question, what is your sales strategy? What do you do to bring money in the door? They'll either give me an incredibly long and involved answer or they don't have an answer. And I think that's a remarkable thing for a business owner, not to be able to explain in a 1 or 2 sentence description. So understand first that a sales strategy is not what you do. It's how you turn that into revenue. And your sales strategy really should spell out how you bring money into the business. And I don't mean investment or loans or capital. I'm talking about revenue here. And the other really important thing is all other activity should support this sales strategy, whatever you choose, however you choose your sales strategy to be. Does that make sense? Can I get some nods there? Does that make sense? Great. When people talk about a sales strategy, I think you really need to come back to a really simple setup here. You can do MBAs around this sort of stuff. So I'll try and keep it really, really simple. I don't have an MBA, by the way, but this is my experience. And I think this is a really, really easy way of looking at how your business grows sales. And I'll give you a couple of examples as we go along. There's 3 ways you can grow your business. One is you grow the number of customers. Pretty simple stuff. I'm going to give you the example of an ice cream shop. An ice cream shop sells ice creams. They have 20 flavors. In order to grow that business, you just need more customers through the door. There's not really much else you can do. You don't want to go and start offering pizzas as well as ice cream. You don't want to, there's a whole lot of, if you're selling ice cream, if that's your skill set, the most important thing you can do is bring more people through the door. You've got 100 customers a day, you get 50 through the door, 50 more through the door, you've got a 50% increase in your business. Pretty simple stuff. Give you another example. You could grow the number of transactions that your business has. So a cafe would be a good example. Now, in this case, I'm not going to grow the number of customers. I'm simply going to keep the number of customers the same. I've got a small cafe in Mount Beauty. So I've really only got maybe about 40 or 50 customers I can deal with. Thinking about bringing in another 200, 300, 400 customers is pretty hard work in a small town, but I could grow the number of transactions. So I might have somebody come by on their way to work. They'll pick up a couple of coffees, come back at morning tea, have another coffee with a colleague. They might have a slice. Then they might come back at lunchtime and have a salad roll. So you see single customer, but 3 transactions. And by offering more options, so I've offered coffee, I've offered cake, I've offered salad rolls, I might have sandwiches, I might even have in the afternoon, I might even have some pre-prepared takeaway meals that you could pick up on the way home and take home. So you might be able to get 4 transactions out of somebody. So that's a really simple example of grow the number of transactions. Same number of customers, grow the number of transactions. And the last one's pretty obvious, and that's grow the value of each transaction. Best example I'm going to give you here is a restaurant. So restaurant, you might get a family that comes in once a week. So, and you've only got 20 tables at your restaurant. So you can't have hundreds of more customers come in every Friday night. You've only got 20 tables. Family can only come once a week. They can't really be expected to come 7 nights a week. So you're not going to grow the number of transactions. But what you could do is add more items to the menu at the premium level. So you could grow the value. So you might have a wine list that starts off with a $10 bottle of wine, $20 bottle of wine, but goes all the way to a 50 or 100 or 200, or I don't know which restaurants you've all been to, but wine can get pretty expensive. But you can imagine single customer, single meal, so still one transaction, but by increasing the value of the items within that meal, you can increase the value of each transaction. So that's the third way of growing in business. So I know there's a lot of words there, but pretty simple stuff. The key here is I think a business needs to absolutely identify which of these activities you're doing. And if you remember nothing else from today's discussion, this is the key point here, is businesses really need to choose one of these to focus on. That's what'll make your decisions around how you engage the online environment so much easier. Okay, second thing. So first thing is identify your sales strategy. The second thing is use that sales strategy to direct your online and social media activities. So for example, if you decided that you were the ice cream shop, you're looking for more customers, you need more followers on social media. You need more people seeing your brand. Similarly, the second idea of more transactions, you need to be giving your consumers more reasons to buy. So if I was to look up Facebook for my local cafe, I'd be expecting to see that we've got new slices, we've got homemade salad rolls, we've got, they'd be talking about new reasons to come by more often, more transactions. And similarly, high value transactions, you'd be looking to talk about add-on sales or premiumization. So you might want to talk on your restaurant blog about the new wine list that you've got and the vineyards that you've went and visited and the wines that you picked up for your cafe. So you might be talking about a much more of a long form, involved discussion around those things, new things that you're offering, as opposed to the ice cream shop, which is really just about, it's summer, it's hot, we're all into ice cream. We've got 20 flavors down here. It's Friday night, bring the kids down. It's pretty simple. You're really just about brand awareness. So use that sales strategy to direct how you want to tackle your online social media types of activities. Third thing is to obviously share your story with your tribe. And if you've had a chance to look at our Instagram, it's exactly what we've done. And social media for cyclists, ironically, even though you're supposed to be out there riding your bike, social media is a huge part of it. Makes sense. Instagram was built for iPhones. Perfect to put in your back pocket when you're cycling. You can take them with you, take photos of where you're at, and you can share it with people. Social media was perfect for an activity like cycling, but it's obviously ideal for all sorts of other things. Let's get into that a little bit. So our approach to social media was really about sharing our story. So as I said, Instagram kind of really kicked off, I think, in about 2010, but got rolling, absolutely rolling in 2014, which coincidentally is when we got started. And I remember asking the boys, how are we going to approach this? Do we want to look at Facebook? And they said, no way, no. Now, remember it back in 2014, my boys were 15 and 20 respectively. And they said, forget Facebook. It's for old people who share photos of their grandkids and cats. Now, that's changed dramatically. And in fact, Facebook has now, a few years back, they bought Instagram. But at the time, that was a really astute decision. And Instagram was, if you know much about social media, I'm going to say it was algorithm. So it was a chronological feed. So it was just perfect for telling your story in almost in real time, or certainly within a chronological manner. It's immediate, it's transparent, it's incredibly visual. So you look at our kits. I mean, can you imagine if I was trying to describe a Hunter Brothers cycling kit without the aid of pictures? So social media that was based essentially on photographs was perfect for us. It allowed us to build a connection with people who were interested in what we did, other cyclists. And it also, particularly now, social media, particularly Instagram, is not just about photographs. It's perfect for videos, so stories, reels. It can link to blogs. It can link to your online store. It's now got an e-commerce platform built into it. So for us, social media was a perfect way to share the story and kind of link all of that together. Guy, how are we going time-wise? We're all okay. I'm going to keep rolling here.
Great. Sorry, I was muted. Keep rolling.
Yeah, cool. The other thing to consider when you're looking at your activity online or dealing with the online environment, and that is content or your online activity, you need to see it as an investment. So I know there's a lot of small business owners, not so much now, but certainly a few years back, and they're still hanging around, who see it as a pain in the butt. They see it as hard work. They see it as frustration. They see it as a waste of time, a waste of money. You need to flip that on its head completely and see it as another investment in your business. That ability to share your brand, your story, your content, your activity, whatever it is that you're doing, and we've talked a bit about the things you might be doing earlier, you need to see that sharing that is now an incredibly important part of your business activity. As we know, most Australians have got access to a mobile device, probably more than one. And I think we all understand that whenever we're sitting around at night watching TV now, or even if we're not watching TV, we're watching a streaming service, most people have got another mobile device on the side that they might be scrolling through. So people are sitting around watching something on Netflix. They might also be scrolling and doing some online shopping or following their friends on Facebook on another device. So consumers or the people you want to engage with have got almost limitless access to your business and every piece of content. I mean, Victor mentioned before he'd been Googling me and found stuff that I'd written a few years back and, posted on a blog and stuff like that. So, people now use the online environment to do all sorts of research. And it's interesting, it's not just young people, as we know. I mean, Facebook notoriously is for old people, but I'd argue that's not true anymore. But all the key demographic groups, boomers, all the way through to Generation X, the millennials, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, TikTok's got a whole new generation as well that's flying as well. The other thing about, and this is a point I want to make that's true regardless of whether you agree with anything else I've said, all websites are equal. And this is the beauty of it. So for example, Hunter Brothers Cycling, we've got a website, an online e-commerce site. It's pretty standard. It's one that we just got off the shelf. But the reality, once the consumer gets on there, is it's no bigger or smaller than the Nike website or the Amazon website or anything like that. There's less content in the background, but it fills up the screen exactly the same way that the greatest and largest websites in the world do. It's the same with your social media. Your photograph is no bigger or smaller than the greatest photograph ever taken by, the Nike campaign or the Adidas campaign or any of the big brands in the world. So to me, I was saying earlier to Victor, what makes me optimistic is just what a great time this is and what a great opportunity this is for small business. And this is why, is because small business can now compete with the big guys in a way that was just never, ever, ever possible as recently as maybe 5 years ago. And the last point I want to make really is about footy boots or music and choice. So my story about footy boots is I grew up in Albury, and about once a year, my dad would take me down to the local shoe shop. Ironically, it was called Hunter's Shoes on Dean Street, and we'd buy a pair of footy boots for the upcoming season. And they had 3 pairs of footy boots every year that I could choose from. And it was just a matter of which size I was getting. Anyway, I always wanted to go with Dad because he was always happy to buy me the Adidas ones, the top of the line ones. But then, I don't know when it was, maybe I was 15 or 16, something like that. And I started going to Melbourne on sporting trips. And I realized that there were these huge sports stores and they had 20 options. So they had Adidas and Puma and Tiger and a whole bunch of these other brands. And they had 20 options. And so every year when I went to Melbourne on sporting trips and stuff, I would buy my footy boots there. So it was 20 versus 3 back in Albury. Well, of course, now on the internet and online, through any of these large brands, I can buy any pair of football boots I want. And in fact, in most cases, I could probably customize them. I can get not only my size, but I could probably choose the color, the stripes, the studs, and so on. So in a way, choice is irrelevant now. Choice is completely and utterly irrelevant. Music's the same. And we can all remember, I remember going to the record shop. I'd watch Countdown on a Sunday night. I'd saw the first U2 film clip, and I'd race down to the record store in the morning, and I'd flick through on Monday after school, and I'd get the U2 album, and that was it. And that was pretty much it. If it was on Countdown and if it was in the record shop, then I bought it. Whereas, of course, since 2001, when the iPod came along, and then now, I mean, music with streaming services and so on, choice is just a complete given. Choice is no longer something that small business is at a competitive disadvantage to the larger businesses at. And this is a win for small business, because now it's not so much about how much choice there is, it's about the right choice. It's about a curated choice. It's about your knowledge, your expertise. And I guess this goes back to this really important point. You go back to your sales strategy, and I go back to my ice cream shop and the cafe and the restaurant. You see how important choices are there. The ice cream shop, if he wants to do really well, he or she wants to do really well with have great flavors in ice creams, but 20 might be great. Do you need 100 flavors? Do you need 200? I mean, I don't know if anyone's been to Messina there's one here in Collingwood. They're dotted around the place now. Great ice cream shop, but they just offer ice cream. Now, they get queues of people on a Friday night, warm Friday or Saturday night, lined up to get their ice cream. I'm sure if they put sandwiches in there at some point, they'd probably do okay. But they've just stuck with what they know best, and that is ice cream. They don't muck around with coffee. They don't muck around with cakes, all those sorts of things. They just do one thing fantastically. And a good example, for example, with Hunter Brothers, we get a lot of people say to us, oh man, COVID's come along. Everyone's taken up cycling. You should do casual cycling apparel. And that's true, we could. There's certainly a market in there, but I guess what we've had to do is make the choice as to whether that's really us, and whether we can compete with the big guys. So can I compete with Nike and Adidas all the way through to the more entry-level product? It's a huge, huge commercial decision that we'd have to make. So what we've said is, no, we've got this tiny niche area in our sport, but it's something that's defendable and something that is immediately identifiable as Hunter Brothers. And we can create content around that has a really, really specific brief. And we don't have to try and be all things to all people. And for a tiny business, sometimes that's incredibly important. Let me just go back here. If I go back to the restaurant example, if, for example, you were wanting to increase the size of your transaction, the value of your transaction, if you had a wine list and there were only 2 wines on there, that might be way too small. If you went and saw a wine list, you'd expect to see 10, 20, 30 maybe options on a decent wine list in a restaurant. So again, sometimes it's not about keeping it narrow like we have. It might be about expanding that offer and really becoming known for having an amazing choice of wines or an amazing choice of whatever it is, whatever your restaurant choice is, you know, a great choice of handmade pastas or different sauces, all those sorts of things. So your sales strategy should really be in alignment with your product strategy or your merchandise, your offer strategy. So I know I've really rushed through this, and I'm happy to kind of go back to anything if I didn't cover it properly, but let's just review where I think the 5 points you need to consider in terms of growing or engaging properly with the online environment. So one is have a clear sales strategy. And you go back to those 3 ideas is what are you actually doing to get money through the business? You're getting more customers, more transactions, or you're increasing the number of transactions. You then need to use that strategy to direct your online social media activity. And I'd argue you should be using it to direct most of your activity. The sort of people you hire, the sort of environment you create, all of your marketing, all of your sales strategies should really be supported by that. I then think in the online environment, I think it's critical that you share your story. Now, our example is we've created an online Instagram account. It's hugely visual. We're posting 1, 2, 3 times a day, depending on the format. We're creating videos. We're doing all sorts of stuff like that. But we also have, on our website, we also have blog posts as well. So they're more long form. They might have 20, 30 photos in them, and they might relate to, we've done a lot of travel. So we've gone and raced in the United States. We race in China or wherever it has happened to be, Korea. And so we'll do more of a piece about the trip, the race that was involved. So it's a long form piece. But I'm not posting that on Instagram. We might simply post a couple of photos from that and then create a link back to the longer form. So for the person who wants to get into our brand a bit more, I'm offering something at the back end. But my primary strategy is to grow our brand awareness, and I'm using Instagram, and I'm using that I'm using that highly visual, highly interesting approach that Instagram allows you to use. I'm not simply putting up the blog posts as what we're doing. I mean, it just would look like an essay, look pretty boring to start with. So you can share your story in a number of different ways. You also, as I said earlier, you need to see content as an investment. We've invested a huge amount, and it could be simply about getting a better, don't use your iPhone, even though the cameras are pretty good these days. It might simply be about getting a better camera, learning about taking better pictures, or it might be about writing, improving your writing skills. Whatever it is that you choose you're going to do, invest in that properly. It might simply be about hiring people who know how to do that. I'll give you a good example. We have more recently been doing some more paid promotions on social media. So we have our own organic content, but we also have some paid promotions on there as well. Now, I don't do that. I'm not ad tech. I come from a sales, I come from a marketing, and I come from a product background. So we've hired an agency that we're working with to do that because we don't have the skills to do it ourselves. Maybe at some point we might if we decide to learn, but we've made that investment. And finally, it's now about the right choice. So using all of what I've just discussed there, small business needs to be making choices about what it is that they're offering their customers. Have you got too much? Have you not got enough? Have you got the right categories, the wrong categories? These are all things you should be doing anyway, but I think there's a framework here that you can use. And that, I thought I had one more screen for you, but that's it. So I guess that kind of wraps up my the formal part of the presentation, and I'm more than happy to go back over anything or answer any questions or listen to any comments that you might have. Guy?
James, that was fantastic. Really love the authenticity of the sharing, and that's going to be my first question. Everyone, hopefully we're all familiar with Zoom by now, and there is a chat window, and I see Victor is a great contributor and sharing some salient points there. So thank you, Victor. But if you have any questions, there's a small enough audience here that feel free to just turn your mic on and holler and raise your hand. But James, it was fantastic. My first question to you, James, is around authenticity, because we can see the drums in the background, we can see the racket stuff. You're the real deal. You're delivering quality, apparel in cycling. You're doing, let's say next generation in the way you're handling manufacturing and distributing worldwide. But here you are in the flesh and real. It's not some fake brand. What do you think about in reaching customers, authenticity as part of that story? I'm hearing that a lot in the questions.
Yeah. Look, it's a really good point. I guess early on, so we made the decision that it was going to be completely transparent as to who we were, and we were going to share our personal journey. And as I said, we've done a lot of travel and a lot of events, and we've literally shared that journey using social media, so blog posts or even just live streaming when we're at an event, that sort of thing. But even the name of the brand itself, 100 Bros Cycling, it's literally, that's us. And that's been, not surprisingly, our biggest market is in Melbourne, and that's because the boys live here, and we literally turn up to the race events and we're part of this cycling community here. So our brand awareness here is much higher than it might be in other places. And then when we travel to, we have an association with a couple of big events in the United States, LA, San Francisco and New York, Korea. So we're really well connected with a couple of Korean cycling brands, and we've been there to attend events. And then last year we went to China, which I don't think we'll be going to for a while again. But that was fantastic. So look, it doesn't have to be the way. It's been right for us. But there are other brands. For example, I worked for many years at Country Road. And I don't know if you know, the guy who founded Country Road's a guy by the name of Steve Bennett. Now, he probably could have called Country Road Steve Bennett and, clothing or something like that. And it was his brand from the get-go. It was he and his sister who were the founding partners there. But he always wanted it to be a brand that could go on and live without him or his sister personally. And it's done exactly that. And I worked with him again at Drizabone for a number of years. And it was the same there. He really resisted wanting to tell his story and his personal involvement in the business. And it's interesting. I've got to be honest with you, I didn't agree with him. I felt like, he, as the founder of that business, was an incredibly interesting story. But that was his approach to it. And if I look at my business compared to the size of the Country Road business, maybe I wasn't as right as I thought I was.
Well, just this morning, I was watching a video clip about R.M. Williams, and there was a guy reviewing the boots and cutting them in half and talking about how amazing they were. And there's a person's name that's lived with the brand, but I guess that authenticity and being true to the brand and being consistent. I can't say I'm the best at that. No, it's easy to observe. So, Victor, you were going to jump in there. Did you have a question?
One of the things I observed in my research before was a wonderful blog post by James that tells the anecdote of a large corporation CEO who hated meeting the customers. So he always went on his store explorations before the store opened so he wouldn't meet a customer. And James, you said one of the things that should make us optimistic as small business operators is that we actually do know our customers. We do know our display. We do know how we look at them. So do you want to intersect that, with what you've been saying about storytelling and sharing the story? I just love that wisdom of yours that we actually know our customers.
Well, look, that's one of the things the online environment allows you to do in a way that it's almost impossible to compare with, the previous bricks and mortar sort of environment that we lived in. But we get, so one of my roles at 100 Brothers is we manage the social media together, but one of my roles is that I deal with all of the comments and feedback that we get. So we get hundreds of comments every day. It's just, I just sort of scroll through it. And a lot of it is just likes and thumbs up and all sorts of things, you know, but there's a heap of questions about sizing, fit, you know, product related things, or we're obviously, we sell kit, we don't sell bikes, but there's a lot of bikes in our picture. So we get a heap of questions about, oh, you know, what's that bike you're riding? Where did you get those wheels? All sorts of technical things. So just connecting that way, it's a huge advantage. And yeah, I mean, the story, just for the others in the room, there's this classic story. I was working, this is back when I was working at Country Road, and I was dealing with a department store. And I discovered that in the weeks leading up to Christmas, we had to have everything ready on the shop floor by about 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning, even though the store didn't open till 9 or 10. And this was because the CEO of this 40 store organization that shall remain nameless today used to come around and do his sort of store visits and engage with, work out what was happening, what wasn't happening. But he hated doing it during shopping hours when customers were there, because he didn't like crowds. So we all had to sort of get in there at 6 to fix stuff up and everything like that, which, look, honestly, it had to be fixed at some stage. That wasn't the point. The point was that I have worked with other CEOs who the idea of being on the shop floor of a Sydney city department store at midday in the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas was their idea of heaven. They got to see what their customers were looking at, how they were interacting with product, how their staff were working with the customers. All of that was just, they loved that. And this guy didn't. Now, not surprisingly, he didn't stay for long, and not surprisingly, that business ain't in great shape these days. The terrible thing about it was that it just infected the rest of the staff in that organisation. Their view, not surprisingly, was that their consumers and engaging with their consumers was a bit of a hassle, because that's what their CEO's view was, and it was transparent to everybody that that's what his view was. So that's the sort of background to that story.
Can I take you then to the other end? So they say that the greatest optimists on earth are fishermen and golfers. You know, there's always that thought that the next thing will be there, or the next shot. And another thing you shared on your blog, so I'd like the rest of you now to sort of jump in with questions and the like, whether you put your hand up or type something in so we can spot you want to ask a question. So you went on your first rainbow trout fishing expedition on the Goulburn River with a guide. And there were 2 lessons for me in your blog. One was what a brilliant businessman, salesman the guide was. The other was how optimistic he was. But then how he infected you with optimism as the client. Do you want to share that story of ultra small business?
So in real simple terms, you might know them. They're the Goulburn Valley Fly Fishing Centre down on, they're at Thornton, just outside of Eildon on the Goulburn River. And I decided I wanted to learn years ago, decided I wanted to learn fly fishing. So I don't know how I found these guys, probably on the internet. And I've got to be honest, they were one of the very early businesses and brands that I really engaged with online. So this was really, really early 2000s, maybe even earlier. And so I went and I sort of spent a day with one guy in particular, and he was my guide. Now, you know, fly fishing at the best of times is a pretty marginal thing, but having someone pay you to teach them how to do it, and the idea that you were going to get them to catch a fish like wild trout. This wasn't like we're at a trout farm or something. You've got to be optimistic to think that you're going to be able to do that, because the worst case scenario is you just spend the whole day with, you know, the fly line tangled in trees and never on the water. You don't catch a fish. It's boiling hot or it's freezing cold. And terribly for me, if I didn't have enough coffee, I was going to be in trouble. So I sort of felt that these guys were super optimistic. But every single time I made a mistake and I did tangle, or, you know, I didn't land it in the right place and all sorts of things, he was there. He had another rod. So he'd just take my tangled rod out of my hand, put the fresh one in my good hand, and away I'd go start casting again. And he'd just direct me further up the stream. saying that little patch over there or down here or just landed here, and oh, that's so close, that's so close. I don't think I actually landed a fish. I think we sighted one. It came real close to biting my fly, but that was it. But I had and the article that Victor's referring to is, it's the best, I was writing about it as the best retail experience I have ever had. And now for a lot of people, that might be a great restaurant you went to when you were traveling in Italy or France, or it might be, you know, a wonderful day cycling in the mountains or something, you know, whatever it is, your greatest retail experience. For me, it was this. These guys were masters of optimism, coaching, educating me, and, you know, I went away from the day not just feeling like I'd had a great day and that I'd learned a heap. I was one of their best customers for years afterwards. It was that good. I became a regular customer, and they had the premiumization going. So they had the good, better, best strategy. I took the CEO from a client of ours up there one day, and we hired them, two of the guys. We had boats and we floated the Goulburn River for about 30 or 40 kilometers for the whole day. That cost a fortune, but that was a classic case of increasing the size of the transaction. So it was still just me and one other guy. So there wasn't 50 of us, but we got the premium package. So it was a good example of what I was talking about today.
Great. I'll ask you one more question just on the innovation space. So what I love about what you're doing is you are using the best of the best. So, you know, Italian production and, you know, everything you do seems to be best of the best. So you've obviously tested this, tested that, experimented. Can you tell us about your innovation journey, both in the bicycling brand and then, of course, in your more general retail activity?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess we always understood that because of the design aspect, the artwork, and it was always going to be fairly niche. So we kind of, on the other side, we had to what's the right word? We had to kind of reassure the customer that, sure, you're over here making a bit of an out there decision in terms of the apparel you're going to wear, but you want to know that it's absolutely premium quality. So that's why we sort of chose the Italian production side of it. That's really where we can get the best. There's a couple of other, Switzerland and a few other places, but Italy's as good as it gets. And so it really meant that in terms of, what's the right way to put it? I guess it enabled us to create an atmosphere of, you could trust the product. It was premium level. It was pro quality. And all these things are important to gear freak cyclists. Then you could have some fun with the design and the artwork and the color and so on. So that was sort of the balance we were trying to establish. Victor, I'd say that our innovation is probably, I feel like in some ways, once you're in the cycling game, that's probably not that innovative. For us, the innovation more from a business sense is really how we've approached our use of social media. And I'm probably not even talking about Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or anything like that. It's more about the sort of content we're using. So for example, if any of you are familiar with Instagram, they've just created this new format called Reels, which is somewhere between their short form stories and their longer form TV setup. And it's essentially a rip-off of TikTok, let's be honest. Instagram being great at ripping off Snapchat. And then, so Reels, they introduced it, and they have an algorithm that rewards content creators who use their new product. So we started creating Reels very, very quickly, and it's been fantastic for us. So Instagram have rewarded us, their algorithm rewards us by putting our reels further up people's feeds and putting it into explore feeds. Now, if you don't know anything about Instagram, it doesn't really matter other than to understand that that is getting our brand much, much higher presence and in more and more people's social media feeds. Go back to what I said really early on, our number one job as a brand, we started from scratch, no bricks and mortar, no nothing. So we've always been chasing more customers. And if you think about it, our product is very, very niche. So for us, it's not like we can dominate an entire market. We're always going to be just a few customers in lots of markets. So for us, it's about brand and reach. So the innovation, we try and be as innovative as we can in terms of using, some people call it gaming the algorithm. So understanding what's new in social media and then jumping onto that as quickly as we can and getting the best out of that within the context of our sales strategy. All of that would be irrelevant if we were selling something that required acres and acres of written technical data to convince somebody to get on board with us. Having flashy videos, completely irrelevant. So it's about getting your sales strategy and then finding what are the innovative ways that you can use that. Does that make sense?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And because of course, as you say, you've got a stable product. The innovation is in the way you get the attention of the buyer. And one of my gurus who we've had twice on our videos is John Hagel, who wrote The Power of Pull.
Yep.
You know, that is in this world where we're all inundated with marketing messages and sales messages. How do you draw people to you?
So bringing it back to the conversation, James, I mean, you're right that there's this technical minefield, which is the delivery mechanisms, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and that's a whole separate session that we will have at some point through this journey, how to leverage the tools.
Yep.
But the reason why we wanted to start with you is first to understand how to reach customers. And reaching customers, I mean, if I've heard you right, is be passionate about your products and be passionate about serving customers. Know your product and know your customers. If you don't have those two fundamentals of knowing and being passionate about customer and products, you're going nowhere. That's the short journey. Then I think you mentioned to tell your story, and you didn't use the word authentic, but to be really clear about what you are and what you represent. And I've really appreciated you sharing that. The technical minefield, which it sounds like you're also quite adept at through the mother of necessity, how to deliver within the environment is important, but that content is key. If you don't start from a point of passion and knowledge of your product and your customers, then you've got nothing to write about.
Yep.
And then if you've got nothing to write about, understanding the technical delivery doesn't matter. Does that sound right, really, as the journey? You've got to start with knowing your product and being passionate and knowing the customers you want to reach.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just add the third thing there is I do think it's one thing to know your product, one thing to know your customer, but it's kind of critical from a commercial, simple business point of view is you need to understand, you need to be really clear. One or two sentences is how you bring revenue into your business. If you can't answer that question, I think you're always going to struggle because, as you say, there's just way too many sort of options and choices out there. But once you understand exactly what it is that you're doing to bring revenue into your business, then that'll help you make decisions about whether you should be on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it happens to be.
James, it's been fantastic, and we've got a small group here. Still, again, treat it like a town hall. Everyone, put up your hand. James has a wealth of knowledge on building and brands and marketing products. But thank you, James. It's been amazing having you share your journey and your view on how to reach our customers online. So I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Guy. And yeah, you're right. No parent says they can have 100 flavors on your cone. I just used that number as a sort of an example. Yeah. So I apologize for that.
No, there's certainly a limit to how many flavors you need, and that's being sensible too.
And that could be choice. There's a whole other session in that, the number of flavors that would be appropriate in an ice cream shop, and a lot of people have a good opinion on that.
I was in Beechworth the other day with my kids, and we did order an ice cream. And it's always, can I have 3 flavours? No, you can have 2. Oh, really? You know, so there's a limit to how much we can consume. And actually, I will ask one more question, James, just generally about marketing. Often people talk about give them 3 options and put, you know, the middle one as the one they want to take. Is that an old school mechanism for selling? You give a premium option, the one you want them to buy, and a lower one. What are your thoughts around how do you position?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'll go back to the Steve Bennett, the guy that founded Country Road. We always used to go into the showroom. We were a wholesale business for a long time there, and go into the showroom, and he always had this product that he was just going to, he knew they were going to throw it out. We never even had any stock in it. It was just more a matter of filling up the sort of the rails or the table and stuff. So yeah, it's a strategy. But again, if it depends what your sales strategy is. I'm just trying to think of how you'd apply I guess with the ice cream shop, you know, you might have 50 flavors, but you'd understand that you're going to do 90% of your business out of 10 of those flavors. But really, there's that idea of a cornucopia of flavors is what really gets people excited about an ice cream shop. But they all end up back at chocolate and vanilla or whatever it happens to be. And you just need to tailor your supply side to that. But yeah, you're right. There's a number of different techniques that you could use.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a quagmire of other ththings about running a business and dealing with inventory and
absolutely
stock control, all that you could share with us. But again, thank you very much for sharing your perspective on how to create that relationship with the customer and to reach customers. Victor, if there's no other questions from the floor, I wonder if you might wrap us out with a couple of thoughts on, you know, stepping forth for the rest of the day with optimism.
So there's one question that I always ask the presenter in these things. Is there something, James, that you need that we who are your admirers and your fans can help you with?
Look, it's having done this a little while, what's really helpful is really directly, I'm always keen on feedback as to what are the points that I made that resonated or what didn't make sense. And that just enables me to I guess, refine the conversation I'm having in the future. That's a really direct thing. I'd also be interested, I'd be fascinated on if you guys have taken a look at what we're doing online, to get some feedback on that. Just, I mean, does it resonate with people? Does it look too weird? Do you think we post too often, not often enough? All those sorts of things. I'm always interested. I mean, I've just talked you through exactly what our strategy is behind a lot of that stuff. But Nike aren't worried about me at the moment. So we're obviously not doing everything right, you know, and I'm always interested on feedback in feedback. You know, it doesn't bother me I don't have an ego to worry about there. So I'm really keen to hear what you guys think. So if you wanted to get in touch with me separately, more than happy to chat, or through Guy, that'd be fantastic.
All right, so there's a bit of homework, everyone. You can have a look at Hunter Brothers Cycling Instagram and see what you can learn from there, but comment back in because, you know, James is the one that has to do that. So, look, I'll give you one hint. We're about to launch a new product called The Habits of the Optimist. It's going to be, instead of Coursera, where it takes you 25 hours of boring lectures to learn something, ours is going to be 1 hour. And there's one habit of the optimist that is compulsory and infectious. And in Wodonga, where you don't have to wear a mask all the time, it's very important, and that is smile. You know, when you look at your customer, whether it's smiling with your face, whether it's that greeting that you give them, whether you smile with your eyes, that is in fact one of the most engaging things, and the science verifies that. And the other thing I want to give you today, I trained a group of prisoners in this, and it was so effective, we were asked to do a training program for the prison managers. And in Australia, if you ask someone, how are you? What answer do you get? Well, you're all on mute, so you know 60 to 65% of Australians say not bad or not too bad. What a wasted question and a wasted answer. So my homework to you for the next week is don't ask anyone, how are you? Say something like, what's the best thing in your day? Or what's good that's happening? Or what's been the best thing in your week? Try it for a week and you will see an incredible change in the conversations you have. And I recently did a radio interview in New Zealand with the business coach for the All Blacks. And he said, in the introduction, he said, I've been shamelessly plagiarizing this man for the last year. And of course, the thing he'd taken away from me was every one of his customers knows that when he comes in, he wants from them a good story of something that's going well. They can tell him the shit and the bad things later. But what he wants to hear is a story of success that engages. So that's my homework to you. No more, how are you? It's always, what's the best thing happening? Try it for a week. And if it doesn't work, you get a refund on this session. James, fantastic. I just love and adore what you're doing. It is fantastic. And the way you are transmitting this knowledge to us. Guy, you are I just love what you do and what you stand for. In trying to lift your whole region and beyond. And Craig Murphy, who looked after the tech for us, it was seamless. Thank you, Craig. And everyone, let's wave together, send a love heart from Reactions, and blow a kiss to James and Guy and Craig and the rest of you.
Thank you, everyone. So in closing, thanks to the sponsors, because the Victorian government helps make this happen, as well as some other local sponsors. And next week, great segue, thanks, Victor, micro-learning in the modern workplace. You know, life is less about degrees and more about learning as we go. So we've got Prashil Singh and David Broadhurst will be speaking there. And I think that'll be an amazing session, just learning about learning as we go rather than the traditional primary, secondary, tertiary learning. So thanks again, James. Thanks, Victor. Thanks everyone else for giving up your hour. And hopefully you can make it to some of the other sessions. Cheers.
Fantastic.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Guy. Good on you.